The Loud House is the best Nickelodeon cartoon in this generation, with its variety of characters, its unique art style, and its inclusion of different types of storylines from its background characters. That makes it a very huge breath of fresh air from Nickelodeon's other cartoons. But every show has its good and bad episodes, and unfortunately, The Loud House has way too many of them. But I'm going to be counting down my top 5 worst Loud House episodes as of season 3 being currently airing on television. Enough babbling, let's get started. So this episode has Lincoln being the biggest jerk he has ever been to his family to date. Yeah, this episode is pretty painful to watch. That's going to be a trend in this video, so my apologies in advance. Lincoln is a jerk in this episode because he sees the high life when he wins a limo from a mustard contest. Yeah, very strange, but whatever. And also makes a new friend, which is way older than him, changes his personality for the worse when he sees benefits he can have with rich friends, or so-called friends, let's just say. A couple of questions though. First of all, this dude is way older than Lincoln, so why does he pester him so much to hang out with him when he knows the age difference is vastly different? Because he's rich? What about his parents? Did he even ask permission from his parents? Who am I kidding though? Lincoln has one of the worst parents in cartoon history. And second, why Lincoln didn't just be honest with him from the very beginning, so the blowback wasn't as hard when he found out his so-called friend found out about him not being rich. Let me guess, because you didn't want Lincoln to be a well-minded character for this episode? Whatever. So the sisters get upset for him because he breaks his promise to them after he's gone for too long, when he was supposed to take them all out to eat. So it's kind of understandable why they're upset with him, because he was supposed to share his prize with the rest of the sisters, but obviously he didn't. And he doesn't take it very well. Instead of apologizing to them, he just argues with them and just pretty much says, "I'm rich, too bad, so sad," when he's really not rich. All he did was win a limo for a couple of days. There wasn't a cash prize involved, so I don't know what Lincoln's getting at here and why he didn't just apologize to them from the start, but whatever. Lincoln gets his payback, and it drags on for just way too long. And the lesson's really supposed to be, make sure you know where you came from and don't be a jerk when you actually are successful. But it doesn't really have a huge impact when we know Lincoln is a better character than this. Yes, he makes mistakes, but he's usually a kind person to be around. But this episode does end on a sweet note, so I'm not going to completely put it any higher on the list, but it's definitely not an episode to watch if you do care about Lincoln's character growth throughout this whole series so far. Remember the 80s and 90s where we had complete gender stereotypes that completely ruined us as complete human beings, as being individuals and have our own characters and personalities that reflect on our own person and not by our gender? Yeah, this episode is pretty much that, but a little bit worse, because in this generation, we're supposed to be advancing in humanity here, not going backwards and telling us that boys are rough and girls are perfectly fine and sentimental people. Again, not everyone's like this per se, and some people are in the opposite boat on how this episode is written, but it's only because a lot of people and show writers like the Loud House themselves make these kind of episodes to be complete and utter gender stereotypical garbage. I'm gonna give you a reason why Lincoln's sisters are so likable. They each have their own stereotype of their own based on their hobby or whatever, but at least they have their own personality enough for us to pick a favorite besides just, oh, this is the girl and this is the boy. The reason why they're all sisters in the first place was because of a family, by Chris Savino of course, but he didn't make it to a point where it was so centered around girls being girls and then boys being boys, because this episode acts like all the girls are the exact same spectrum as most other girls in this day of age. What? That doesn't even make sense, because when you have Lana and Lynn that are complete opposites from Lori, Lenny, and Lola, just something doesn't make sense here. Why is everyone getting on Lincoln for the littlest of stupid stuff, and then Lincoln's like, oh, these girls get on my nerves, I wish I had all brothers. And to me, that's a little bit annoying, because you know that, yeah, they might be annoying about some boys' architectural, sometimes traits they might have. They're usually pretty patient with your BS. I mean, if we really want to talk about an episode that deals with your BS, watch. And oh boy, that episode is, just deals with everyone's BS. But anyway, this episode has a very weird structure to it. It goes to girls complaining, Lincoln wanting brothers, Lisa having a portal to go to a different dimension where he can go have all brothers, then gets abused by all the brothers because they all have to act like Lynn for some reason, even though the other dimension has the sisters mostly being nice to Lincoln, just because, you know, family, and they're taught family values not to completely hurt and abuse each other. But I guess in this dimension, anybody can do whatever they want, right? Then goes back to the dimension that where he came from, and then voila, he learns that, oh, having sisters is a good thing. Look, I understand that you wanted to make a moral about, well, you should appreciate your family because going to another family, it's not going to be as good because you're not used to that similar lifestyle or whatever. But my God, how can you make an episode like this when you know that not every boy acts like this in the first place? We don't live in the 80s and 90s anymore where we're supposed to be tortured and taught by these cartoons that boys are rough and tough and girls are just nice and sweet and clean. That's just complete BS, and you should know about it. I'm not saying no boys act like this, but most of them don't, and saying that that stereotype still exists in this world is completely absurd. And Kevin, you need to really think about what you wrote in this episode to say,
all boys act super tough and rough and have no sentimental feelings towards anybody, and all girls are just super nice and sentimental towards anybody. Yay! Stereotypical writing at its best!
yeah, it was all Lincoln's dream and all, but we didn't need a dream where Lincoln thinks that all boys are as stereotypical as what Kevin thinks boys are. Let me get this straight. In order to avoid the problems you have by lying to someone is to keep lying to them? That doesn't even make no sense. And this episode thinks that's the true moral to the story. What? I know you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings by telling them the truth because they might be really passionate about something or really passionate about the look they created. But unless you're a little child, you should be able to take the criticism fairly and truthfully, as belongs, it's delivered that way. But sometimes you're gonna get criticism delivered in a very harsh and rude manner. But does that automatically mean that you should discard the criticism and just take it as an insult because you were offended? No, I don't think so, because those harsh criticisms can come from critics or higher people that are more experienced and more well-minded than you are, and just giving you advice for the future career that you want. Of course, there's a difference between harsh criticism and someone just being toxic and very aggressive towards you for pretty much no reason, but you should be able to handle the kind of criticism you get very fairly and well-mindedly. Especially Lana, Lola, Lynn, Luann, Luna, Rita, and Lynn Sir, because these family members in the household are going to take the hardest criticism toward your work. No matter what you do or what improvements you try to work upon, somebody's always going to complain about your work no matter what. And these people getting offended in this episode is quite absurd. And to me, you want to be in these future careers and dream careers, but can't be able to handle the criticism by people that don't even know that industry works in the first place. But you're taking it as somebody throwing salt right at your eyes and saying that you're an idiot, that you should never be in this industry and you should be working somewhere else. No, that's not what any of them are saying at all. A lot of them are just saying that because it's a preference. They might not like the certain hair color on you, but if you like it, that's what counts at the end of the day. If you like a book that you wrote and your friend doesn't like it, that doesn't automatically mean they're insulting you for writing that book, because they might have a complete different preference of literature that your book don't provide. And that goes the same for comedy, art. Those hobbies are all related to criticism, but they're all based on different preferences. So getting mad at someone because they think that the thing you created is either boring or that it sucks, it's mostly based on their preference and their opinion on it. That doesn't count for absolutely nothing unless it comes from a critic from your career. So getting mad at a family member or friend is completely irrelevant, and it makes you look like a crybaby and an oversensitive person that can't take 1 ounce of criticism without thinking, oh, they're insulting me. That's just complete nonsense. And you should be ridiculed for just taking it that way. But I guess pouting in your room because somebody said something you don't like to you, that's the perfect way to settle it, right? Was Lisa being over obsessive with the lie detectors? Yes, but her moral conscience wasn't wrong. Lying because you don't want to do something is wrong. Lying because you don't want to deal with conflict is wrong. Doesn't mean that you have to tell the truth every single time to somebody, especially little kids, so you don't destroy their creativity and aspirations. But that doesn't go for the same for older kids, teens, and especially adults. So, too bad. Being an absolute jerk because of somebody else's opinion is completely absurd and wrong think, especially by the parents. You failed by trying to make Lisa the bad guy in this episode. Instead, you made the rest of the family bad for trying to comply to this mindset that lying is automatically okay just because whatever is wrong. If that's all it takes to destroy your family, then I would never want to be a part of that family in the first place. This episode is just awful, and the morals awful, and the characters are awful. Horribly written to the core. I'm just gonna summarize this episode as quickly as possible and give my opinion on it as quickly as possible. You ready? Let's go. Lori and Lenny fight over a dress. It becomes an episode of the Kardashians. Nothing ever changes. Everything goes back to normal. Lincoln starts a bigger fight, and the parents do absolutely nothing about it. This episode is a pure waste of time, and nothing ever interesting happens to it besides Lincoln commenting how stupid this episode is. But the problem is, we already knew that from the start. So we don't need Lincoln telling us on how stupid this argument started. But hey, whatever. That's how I'm gonna say it. Bad episode all around. Blah! I knew you saw this coming from a mile away. Yes, No Such Luck is the #1 worst episode of all time as of season 3 being currently aired. And it's pretty much a good reason as to why, because this episode sparked a huge war between the fandom itself, between rewrites of the episode and excessive complaining that brought on to this episode and other episodes after that. This episode definitely deserves to be on the top of the garbage bin, that's for sure. Now why, you may ask? Well, there's plenty of reasons. Stupid writing, stupid characters, abusive storyline, and it's definitely way too crude and negative towards Lincoln when this is a show that's centered around comedy and family. Now you might be thinking, oh, it's not too bad, right? Well, you're wrong. Let me just tell you a bunch of reasons why this episode is just way too much for a show like this. First of all, he gets verbally and physically abused, getting kicked out of his house, and is forced to sleep outside. No joke. And he is not allowed to join any family activities such as going to the beach or the movie theater. And all his stuff is sold for money. I'm not even kidding. All of those things I just mentioned happen in this episode just because of a simple concept that has no weight to it whatsoever, And that concept is luck. That's right, bad luck. Remember that superstitious thing that has happened across many cartoon episodes for plenty of ages now? That's right, the Loud House also has an episode based on this exact concept too. But instead of making it funny and somewhat relative to the episode itself, it's just another excuse, in my opinion that is, that it's another torture episode for Lincoln for pretty much no reason at all. Yes, he caused it all on himself by making his big ol' lie theory and all that, but the whole reason he got the idea in the first place was because of Lynn's superstitious character, because she lost in a baseball game and Lincoln was in it, so she called him bad luck. So Lincoln had the idea from Lynn when Lynn was being superstitious in the first place. I don't think it's automatically all on Lincoln's lap. Yeah, he exhalated it, but he didn't even get the idea until Lynn told everyone else that Lincoln was bad luck because she lost her very first baseball game while Lincoln was in it. And everyone just goes, okay, he has bad luck. Oh well, let's just avoid him like the plague because he's got bad luck now. Oh no! Like, how ridiculous is that? Even Lisa, of all people, the super scientific one, can't even acknowledge that this little theory of Lynn's and Lincoln's is a little bit, I don't know, outstretched a little bit stretched here. I don't know. Can Lisa have a scientific reason why Lincoln has bad luck or anything? No, we're just all going to believe it because Lincoln just said he had bad luck? Like, come on. Give me a break. Nobody in this episode has a common head or brains to even figure out that Lincoln is lying just to get out of all the family activities he doesn't want to go to. Let me guess, every time that Lincoln says he's sick, you're just going to automatically believe it and you're just not going to send him to school. I mean, come on, guys. Even the parents, like, I can't even believe the parents even believed this and took it to the extreme consent that they took it. Oh, Lincoln can't sleep in his room. Oh, Lincoln can't go to the beach or the movie theater because of some random excuse that might happen because of Lincoln. He's got bad luck. Oh no. Like I already said though, they're pretty much the worst parents in cartoon history. Yes, they are even worse than Timmy Turner's parents. So keep that in mind the next time you say that Timmy Turner's parents are very, very bad parents. Because Lincoln's is a lot worse and a lot more dumb than Timmy's parents will ever be. Believe me, I have witnessed a lot worse in this episode than I've ever seen in Very Odd Parents history. Why would you force your kid to sleep outside in the doghouse and be completely ridiculed of all his stuff and you just sold it because whatever? It was a joke? Are you serious here? Like, everybody in this house is either retarded or complete jerks because they gotta make the problem way too extreme to the point where it's enough already. We get it. What Lincoln did was bad, but give me a break when you want to push that kind of punishment down somebody's throat and abuse it to the point where Lincoln's not even the bad guy anymore. So what does Lincoln have to do to get his family to think that he's not bad luck anymore? Well, he tried apologizing, but obviously that didn't work for many reasons, I guess, because Lynn's just stupid enough to still believe that Lincoln's bad luck because she's superstitious. And everyone just follows Lynn's bait just like that. So Lincoln has to wear a squirrel mascot costume as the same team as Lynn's baseball team. Amazing. It's just amazing to me. He goes there, Lynn wins, he gets accepted back, but guess what happens next? Just, can you guess what happens next? Yeah, he has to wear that squirrel costume for the rest of the episode, so he doesn't reflect any more bad luck to them. So kind of like a bad luck reflector? Like, he wears it at the beach. because he has to. Like, what were you thinking? First of all, I'm sorry. Carla might be a good writer, but she didn't have the right mindset whatsoever while writing this episode. Who would ever think writing this episode was a good idea? Because I never even seen a punishment like this in my life. It was so brought into the extreme to the point where fans were even irritated by it. To the point where they were making rewrites and they were complaining about it to the great mood and back. That doesn't even make sense when you know when an episode is so bad that even the fans can't even conjure a good reason behind it. 99% of people don't even like this episode, and there's a good reason behind it. Lincoln should have never been through the hell he's been throughout this whole episode, because everyone believed in the luck method for some reason. And the excuses they were making for Lincoln not joining any of their family activities is stupid either. You idiots! I have never seen an episode of a kid's cartoon that is so crude and negative towards the main character in my lifetime from absolutely everybody around him for such a ridiculous reason. I mean, come on, Carla. You've made good episodes of this show before. How can you screw up to the compatibility of having Lincoln be tortured to almost death, in my opinion, because of a stupid concept of an episode such as luck? It hasn't worked before, and it certainly hasn't helped now that the fact that everybody in the house is superstitious for no good reason. Nobody's rooting good. The pacing in the episode's awful. This episode is just the worst of its kind and one of the worst episodes in cartoon history. If you ever want to see an episode where Lincoln is never forgiven throughout the episode from beginning to end, then watch this episode. But if you're tired of hearing about this episode, you should have left this video before the number 1 count was even shown, because obviously to most people this episode is bad, and I gave pretty good evidence as to why. Now if you like this episode, fine, whatever, but it's not even close to be considered a good episode in mine and many people's books. Because if you ever think that treating a child or anybody in this planet like that because they have some magical thing called bad luck, then you're to blame for a lot of faults in this world, and you need to get out of here and think about and reconcile what you really feel is the right way of living. Because this is not how you treat somebody that has a bad luck whatsoever, and not even close for somebody that lied about not wanting to go to any activities that you wanted to do in the first place. Yeah, what Lincoln did was wrong, but he didn't even made the idea up in the first place and didn't rattle up to the point where he got kicked out and all his stuff sold. I mean, come on. Yes, Lincoln needed payback for what he did, sure, but it wasn't even to the extent of what he did that deserved that kind of behavior towards him. This just goes to show you that good writers can make completely awful episodes too when they don't think about what they have written in the series in the first place. Well, there's my top 5 worst Loud House episode list as of season 3 being aired on television. But even though those terrible episodes still exist in the Loud House library, that doesn't mean the show is bad. No, this show is miles better than what we have currently from Nickelodeon this generation. I might come back to this list one day and redo it because there might be more episodes that are bad like this one in the future. But for now, I'm gonna put this list to arrest. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked the video and want to support me further, you can press those positivity buttons down below. It would definitely help me very much. Again, thanks for watching. Cheers.